I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for Investmentpitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Nate Hindman, the head of growth at Bancor. Nate, thanks so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'm very excited to talk about Bancor. I've been following the project for a few years. I know that it has a decentralized exchange portion to it and a liquidity token pool, which I know a lot of people are eager to learn about. Could you give a little bit of just the background of Bancor before we dive deep into it?
Sure. So Bancor has been around since late 2017. It's technically called a an automated exchange protocol. And it's sort of a new way to build DEXs based off of this primitive you mentioned called liquidity pools that sort of automate all the core functionality of an exchange. So the listing of tokens, the order matching of trades, and also the sort of circulation of trading fees to liquidity providers. This is something that you can do all on the protocol level with a permissionless set of smart contracts. Bancor really designed the sort of first model to do that. And you can think of sort of two main types of users of Bancor. That's one, the sort of end users who use the protocol to trade tokens and to perform token-to-token trades on the network. And then the other really important user group are liquidity providers, who are just everyday users who can add their liquidity to the exchange and then generate trading fees from the exchange. Whereas, a typical exchange would be built on just a few liquidity providers, Bancor's protocol can scale to an infinite number of folks that contribute liquidity and also generate fees off the exchange.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting. I know a lot of our viewers are very familiar with centralized exchanges, and there's been this notion of decentralized exchanges, but they haven't quite gotten the popularity that people would have hoped for yet. And now you guys are, you have an automated exchange. I'm not sure if there's a difference between those two, but I'm guessing that the competitive advantage is this liquidity pool where, everyday traders can actually help support the exchange. Does that make it different from a traditional decentralized exchange?
Yeah, exactly. So DEXs were in 2017 and 2018. Everyone was very excited about the capacity of decentralized exchanges. All of a sudden, we could perform non-custodial trades where we wouldn't have a central party owning our information, and there wouldn't be a central point of attack. You wouldn't have to store funds on the exchange that would, lead to hackers and all those big hacks we've seen on centralized exchanges. But, today, 2 years later, we only see that decentralized exchanges make up, way, way less volume than centralized exchanges. And one of the main issues, in addition to sort of the challenges of non-custodial key management, is really the lack of liquidity on decentralized exchanges. And what can sort of happen when you have low liquidity on an exchange is it can cost really high slippage costs for traders. There's lots of volatility. And so what we really found is there was sort of this flaw in order book based exchanges, and decentralized exchanges were sort of replicating this order book based model. And so what Bancor has done is it has removed the order book and replaced it essentially with on-chain reserves that make up these liquidity pools. And like I said, what this allows to do is it really lowers the technical barrier to any everyday user becoming a market maker and contributing their funds to the exchange and sort of staking them on the exchange in exchange for some of the trading fees that are generated. Mm-hmm. So the real idea is that everyone's tokens are just sitting around in their wallet. You might as well stake them on a exchange protocol and generate passive income from that exchange. And this, we hope, and we're starting to see, is really starting to solve the liquidity problem that decentralized exchanges have faced when anyone can be a market maker as opposed to just sort of industrial players or whales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a huge initiative, Nate, because I've personally used decentralized exchanges, and you're right, there are all those problems. And this is something that I know you guys are planning to tackle throughout 2020. And to kick it off on the first day of the year, you guys are planning this ETH BNT airdrop, and this is supposed to play into the whole liquidity token pool. Can you talk about what are the goals for this airdrop and what does it mean for the protocol?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there was a really interesting point made the other day with respect to exchanges, which is they are only as decentralized as their liquidity sources. So if the folks providing liquidity, if your market makers, if it's concentrated between a small handful of, say, like I said, institutional market makers or whales, then your liquidity sources really aren't decentralized. And the vision of Bancor is really having user owned exchanges where there's thousands and thousands of users providing liquidity to the network and to the protocol and exchange, and getting these conversion fees. So the goal of this upcoming airdrop is essentially we're taking 10% of the Bancor Network's token, of its market cap, and we're airdropping it in the form of something called a pool token, which is a share in one of the largest liquidity pools on Bancor. And what's going to happen is every user who holds BNT, the Bancor Network token, at 12 a.m. On January 1st, 2020, so just as the clock strikes midnight, will get this pool token land in their wallet, and it'll be equal to 10% of their BNT holdings. And they'll really, and so this pool token generates fees off of all Ethereum based conversions and trades within the Bancor network. So we're really allowing thousands and thousands of new everyday users to own a piece of the exchange and generate fees off its conversion volume. And our real hope is that this will give people a sort of taste of what it's to be like as a sort of a market maker to an exchange, and that we'll see thousands and thousands and thousands of more users serving as this sort of crucial piece in this new type of exchange.
Wow. Well, that's very cool. And I know that Bancor is already very popular, but there's a lot of people that are stuck in just centralized exchanges. And part of the reason is because they love the handholding and it makes it easy. So for those people that have not used Bancor yet, is it really easy for them to just get Bancor tokens and get involved in the airdrop and start getting on there? Or is there technical barriers to entry? How easily can they get a hold of this airdrop?
So I would say that Bancor's real focus is on the protocol level, and we're sort of beyond this idea that there will be one central front end or one central interface that users will be able to access the exchange. That Bancor is now partnered with many different developers. The sort of amazing part about contract-based liquidity, which is what Bancor is that anyone can tap into this liquidity. So we're seeing many different competing interfaces that are really competing on the user experience to make it as easy for their users to trade tokens on Bancor and to also serve as liquidity providers on the exchange. So a really interesting implementation has been done by 1inch. So they're sort of you can access Bancor through 1inch and a bunch of different sort of DeFi protocols through them. And there's the Bancor.network interface, and there's another interface called CodeTrader. So we're seeing all these different interfaces popping up that are really competing on user experience and making sure that the experience feels exactly like centralized exchanges and then some, and really honing in on the ability for users to sort of take advantage of this new form of exchange.
Mm-hmm. That's great, and I'm glad that you mentioned DeFi, decentralized finance. It's been growing ever more popular. I saw this week 30% more ethers being staked than last week, and this movement has been getting popular through Ethereum and through the DAI stablecoin for the most part. For those people that aren't familiar with it yet, could you just explain a little bit about what is decentralized finance, how does it apply in this situation, and how can those users actually earn income from the tokens that they're holding?
Yeah, so I'd say that metric that you pointed to is very telling. The sort of total liquidity locked within these decentralized finance applications. Because what's really happening is we're seeing more everyday users lend their tokens and contribute their resources in order to power a new type of financial services, one that where there's no bank involved, where there's no central party involved, where it's just these sort of protocols that users can contribute their sort of idle assets and allow other users to perform financial services in a decentralized way, whether that is lending or derivatives or payments, or in the case of Bancor, exchange. And so it's this idea of really removing the sort of middlemen, not only to remove a lot of the costs of these financial services, but to ensure that they are censorship resistant. And I think Bancor is an example of that, in that, like I said before, it's really a protocol level innovation, and that these websites or the front ends and also the protocol are not controlled by any central party, and potentially anyone can spin up a front end that utilizes Bancor technology, the protocol, and the protocol itself is an autonomous sort of entity. You can think of it as a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, where the smart contracts are not controlled by anyone, and they really perform all the core operations of the organization.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. And part of the reason, speaking of DeFi, why DAI had become so popular is because they had a stable coin. They have multiple coins, but they have a stable coin built in as well. And I know that Bancor is doing the same with a USDB coin. Can you talk a little bit about how that fits into the picture and the advantages of having that stability?
Sure. So we have this kind of radical view on stable coins, which is that really every token project that has a clear utility, so that is, that has a utility token, should have a volatile version of its token. So one that can, be changed with can have price fluctuations and serve the needs of speculators, and also a stable version of its token, so that folks who really access the service and use the token in order to use the service, they don't have to be exposed to price fluctuations based on usage of the protocol. And so you can have your speculators holding your volatile asset, and also folks who want exposure to the price movements. And then also the folks that are using the platform as well can have the option of using the stable version of your token that is backed by the volatile asset. So in Bancor's case, that what we did was we created a stable version of our network token, BNT. And again, BNT is used in every liquidity pool on the Bancor network. So when users create a pool, or when they want to add liquidity to a pool, they're doing it in equal parts. The token they're providing liquidity to, and the Bancor network token. And then a trade, say from OMG to BAT, would go OMG to BNT, and then BNT to BAT. So it's this intermediary currency that's needed to power the network. But what we found is that users who want to add liquidity or create liquidity pools, they want to add liquidity to a token. They don't necessarily want exposure to BNT's price movements. So we've created a stable version that allows them to add liquidity or create liquidity pools, but only have exposure to the token they're providing liquidity to, and not necessarily have exposure to BNT. And then what we found is that these actual liquidity pools that are based on stable coins tend to be more profitable for the liquidity providers, because you're not seeing these price fluctuations in the underlying assets. This is a sort of new and better way to build these liquidity pools, and so USDB is really allowing Bancor to sort of rebuild the network and have users more easily add liquidity based on sort of these stable coin based liquidity pools. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's great, Nate. And now,
kind of long answer to
no, that was thorough is good, and it makes total sense, and that sort of leads to the next question. And I think that's the first part of the answer, but there's other parts to it. Is what is the overall big picture of this airdrop? And it's obviously with the stablecoin, it's limiting exposure, but also probably increasing more people bringing them into the DeFi movement and just bringing more liquidity for traders on autonomous exchanges. What are you guys hoping to get out of this when it's all said and done?
Yeah, there's this sort of virtuous cycle with Bancor where the more liquidity that's staked on the protocol, the less slippage there is and the less cost there are for traders to trade on the network. And the more trades that occur on the network, the more fees that are generated for liquidity providers. So our real goal is having as much liquidity on Bancor as possible, making it easy as possible for users to add liquidity. And then the more liquidity that comes, the more traders that will come, and the more the exchange will be profitable for liquidity providers. And so Bancor, overnight, as we ring in this sort of new decade on January 1st at midnight, we'll see the network go from a protocol with, a few hundred liquidity providers to all of a sudden having over 60,000 new liquidity providers that will see this new type of asset land in their wallet that will generate automatic fees off of the conversion volume on Bancor. And we're really hoping that they then look at that asset, they maybe shift liquidity into a different liquidity pool on Bancor to maybe try out some of these stable coin based liquidity pools that really allow them to maximize fees. And then we'll really see this sort of flood of liquidity come to the network and hopefully see even more decentralized exchanges being built in this way, where we can really solve the liquidity problem that exchanges have faced, but we can do so in a way that really decentralizes the liquidity sources across thousands of users so that the exchanges of the future are essentially user owned.
Amazing. Well, all the best in this. It sounds like you guys are taking some huge steps forward to move, the whole exchange movement in the cryptocurrency industry, which needs to move forward. And we're running out of time, but I will leave the links to more information about Bancor and about the airdrop in the description box below. And I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think that there's a lot of valuable knowledge and education, and a great opportunity to get involved with Bancor and to see your project grow. So let's follow up in the near future in the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, I hope to do that. And just all your listeners, if you're interested about getting involved, it's as simple as holding BNT on January 1st at midnight. You can hold it in a non-custodial wallet to receive the airdrop, or you can hold it on some of the bigger exchanges like Binance and LA Token and OKX. So just hold BNT to get involved. And if you want to sort of be a part of our conversation, please sort of join us. And there's a Telegram channel, t.me/Bancor developers, and also at Bancor Protocol is another Telegram channel where the core development team is always here to answer questions and to help. And hold BNT on midnight, and you'll get a 10% free money, a 10% boost in your holdings through the airdrop.
Great. Thank you so much, Nate.
Thanks. Take care.